So to begin our afternoon session, we've got some people who are very near and dear to my heart, big world changers. We've got Danielle Sunberg, Moskovitz, and Mary Olivar that are here to talk about the future of work. It's creating change from within, and they've built a company together that they successfully exited. This is the House of Balance, and we're talking about the balance of feminine and masculine, and they have embodied that and are here to tell us a little bit about their adventures and their journey. So I'm going to invite Danielle to come up and begin.
Thanks, Tiff. Should I stand or sit?
Up to you.
Hi, friends. Hi, everybody. Happy afternoon. As you can tell, I've been having a lot of really great conversations, and you can hear it in my voice. So fabulous to be here. So, like many of you, when I was a baby, my mother sang a lot of nursery rhymes to me, and I'm going to sing one to you right now. We'll see if you know it, okay? Clap hands, till daddy comes home, 'cause daddy has money and mommy has none.
What?
Do any of you know it? Do any of you grow up with it? No? Okay. Well, even if you didn't grow up with it, clearly by your response, you're familiar with this economic story. And it was passed from my grandmother to my mother to me. And I have a 2-year-old daughter. She's never going to hear this nursery rhyme. Okay. And to be fair to my grandmother, we've come a really long way since then. You know, my mother modeled for me what it looks like to create your own financial independence. And she is a brilliant attorney. And she showed me, yeah, absolutely, mommy can come home with money. And it was really important to her to raise children who financial energy current in the world and not be reliant on anybody else. And so I did. I grew up with that value. And I became an attorney. And it was really important to me to not be reliant on anyone else for not just their wallet, but their permission to use what's in their wallet and to be limited to what they give me access to. So to me, creating that financial energy current was all about freedom and power, not just the money to go buy things and do what I wanted to do. So what I'm going to talk about is really, a story of my climbing the corporate ladder of success to what I thought was like the pinnacle of the corporate world as an attorney. And then my decision to leave it all behind. And I went on this journey of exploration. And I'm going to share with you a couple things that I learned during that journey that I think all of us as people and as world leaders can incorporate to create the future paradigm of work and of life that we're here to build. So I studied really hard. I worked really hard, like many of you, to get to where you are today. It just takes that clawing and climbing to get to the prestigious job, to get that feeling of safety that you've made it. And I, collected internships and fellowships and had a leadership position on the executive board in law school. And everything was about building that CV. And when I got my clerkship out of law school, that is essentially this stepping stone. It's this validation to say, okay, you're someone worth working in chambers with a judge, but it's not a career. It is literally a stepping stone. You do it for 1 year or 2 years, and then you have to find your actual next thing. So after that, I was invited to a law firm, and this is a very traditional, typical path in the US for attorneys. And I was just marching along it, saying, yay, I did this thing, and yay, I achieved this, and now I have this degree, and now I have, all of these things on my back to say, look at me, I'm worth it. So when my law firm invited me to their ranks, I was overjoyed. This is a very coveted position for a young attorney, and with no dependents and no mortgage, I was incredibly financially independent. And I thought, okay, my parents can be proud of me now. I earned it. And then work started. Okay, so then the long days and long nights and the weekends and missed birthdays and vacations cut short and all of these things, which was no surprise to me because, like I said, my mom's an attorney and so is my father, actually. So I knew it was coming, but I hadn't lived it yet. And I became an anxious person because I was waiting for all of this satisfaction to come in because I had earned it, I thought, and it wasn't coming. And I just woke up every day in this inertia of living my life and billing hours because I had achieved the ability to bill hours. And so like I would hit the snooze button on my alarm in the morning because not that I was tired, I just didn't want to face my life. And then I was anxious to leave at the end of the day because I never knew if I had billed enough hours to be safe from scrutiny from the partners that I worked with. And so, this was typical. This was the life around me. Everyone where I was living in Washington, D.C. lived this life too. And so there was no one checking each other saying, hey, are you satisfied and fulfilled with your life? Are you? No? Yes? So finally what happened is I had the biggest trial of my career. And we were defending this movie investor client against a possible $6 billion judgment. And usually trials don't make it to actual trial. They get settled or resolved, but this was actually going to trial. So I flew to St. Louis, Missouri to where the trial was being litigated with my team, the partners, the associates, the paralegals, all the staff. And for about a month, we lived out of this hotel. And the hotel ballroom in the hotel we reserved for the entire course of the trial because every morning at 5:45 in the morning, I'd get up, go to the hotel ballroom, and we'd prepare for court. Then we'd go to court. And then we come back from court and prepare for the next day and make adjustments that we needed to make. And we were in the courtroom until 2 a.m. And then I'd go to bed and flop into bed and be like, oh, thank God, and sleep for 3 hours and get back up and do it all over again every day. I feel like that's kind of what we're doing here at Davos. And after a while, I got sick from the sleep deprivation. I didn't have a chance to, go to the grocery store and buy healthy food or anything. It was just an endless carousel of food delivery to this hotel ballroom that we called the war room because that's just where we were focused on winning. And so I was sleep deprived, sick, and I just couldn't do it anymore. I was like, this is not the life that I signed up for. And actually I could have maybe asked the partners if I could go to bed early one night or meditate or go to the grocery store and grab a head of broccoli and chow down real quick. But to be honest, I was intimidated. That's just the culture of where I worked. And it's kind of crazy looking back in hindsight that I couldn't say, this is how you're going to get the best performance out of me is let me sleep, no big secret. But yeah, it just wasn't the culture. So when we were finished with trial, we all flew back home to Washington, D.C. And I remember rolling in my luggage to go to my apartment and I saw my bedroom in the back of the hall and I was like, I'm going to take a very long nap. And then my phone rang. And it was the lead partner on the case. And he's not just the lead partner, he's my mentor, he's the group practice leader, he's a fabulous attorney. And he calls me and he says, congratulations, we won. I'm gonna go take a vacation. I'll see you in 2 weeks when I get back. And I thought, oh great, oh no. And then before I knew it, out of my mouth, I said, no you won't, I quit. And there was silence on the other end of that phone. And I put down the phone and I went and took a nap. I woke up and was like, okay, I just did that. And the prudent thing to do would have been to have something lined up for me to say, okay, I quit, but this is what I'm gonna go do now. But I didn't do that. I had no idea. I just knew I was burnt out, overloaded, overwhelmed, and I needed a break. So thankfully, my then fiance, now husband Ted, and I were gonna go get married and take a honeymoon, and we just decided to extend it. And we just packed our apartment in Washington, D.C. and gave away a lot of our belongings. And with a one-way ticket, we slung our backpacks over our backs and just decided to travel the world. And that was my chance to really cool out. I was like, okay, if I'm burnt out, this is my break. And I didn't realize the gift I was really giving to myself and what was about to happen to me over the course of these travels. Because I'm an avid traveler anyway, but usually it's within the container of a vacation window. And so you have a week or two to like drop in, see some sights, eat some amazing food, and then get back to life. So this was my first experience of I can go deep and slow and really immerse myself in different ways of living and working and playing and praying. And I just stretched. And I got to, visit all of these different temples in Southeast Asia and walk with monks and study Eastern spirituality and then practice energy modalities and become a Reiki master. And these things happened that in my life in Washington, D.C. as an attorney, I would have never imagined possible, let alone actually thought I was going to do. And that's when I realized I wasn't just burnt out and overloaded and overwhelmed. I was living in this limited confine of the Western acculturated definition of success, which is so heavily masculine. And look, the masculine is not a bad thing. I'm not villainizing it. We need it to have balance, but it was just an incomplete story. And so that's when I knew whatever I did next required balance. And when we talk about masculine, we're talking about traits usually like competition, assertiveness, bravery, competence, dominance. And when we're talking about the feminine, we're talking about traits like collaboration, empathy, creativity, nurturing. And those are all amazing qualities that we need to invite into work. But what I found in my studies and traveling was there is this fundamental cohesive energy that defines both, that holds the container for the qualities of both. And so when we're talking about the masculine, we're talking about action and doing. And when we're talking about the feminine, we're talking about being. And in work that's defined by productivity and hustle and dog eat dog and zero-sum game and you gotta win, where is the room for being? I had no idea because I only knew what I knew from the corporate world. The only thing that I knew for sure was that I needed to find out how that would work. So I started my entrepreneurial pursuit because I didn't know of any work that was going to hire me that had that kind of balance. And I founded this company, Ama Healing, with a wonderful team of men, including my husband. And they looked to me to lead the torch of, okay, we're bringing balance to what Ama Healing is a CBD wellness brand that creates products that help people find wellness in their own hearts, minds, and bodies. Because ultimately that's what I needed, was to find wellness in my own heart, mind, and body. And so all over our deck was the balance of feminine and the masculine, and how important it was to create a future paradigm of business that celebrated both and supported both. And when we were doing our raise, we had all these investor calls, several a week. And one of my fellow co-founders, I'll let him out himself if he wants to, said to me, you really need to go put on your old law firm suit because we're talking to VCs here and that is what they want. That's the avatar that they need to say, we trust you, we're going to give you money. And it was like, okay, yeah, I kind of agree with you. I didn't know any other way to do it. So I did. I broke out, my flashy little blazer and I put on my corporate avatar. And it felt like putting on an old, tight shoe. Because at that point I was living in sandals and t-shirts, and it was this whole other version of myself that I had transformed into. And so putting this avatar back on just felt really uncomfortable for me. So in most of our investor calls, I kind of hung out in the back and I let the guys handle a lot of the questions because I didn't feel comfortable. And by the way, they didn't even ask about the feminine masculine balance. I was all over our deck. It wasn't even a question. It was all, revenue models and everything. And so finally we had this call with a potential investor, and I'm doing my thing, looking, professional in the back. And finally the guy turns to me and says, Danielle, how is Amma championing the feminine? And I just sang my tune. And finally, the corporate mask fell away, and I just got to talk about the ethos and the mission, the passion behind why we created this company in the first place. And when I was done, he looked at me and he said, there, that's the future paradigm of business, and that's what I want to invest in. And we closed our check. I was like, okay, I'm onto something here. Then I remember having a conversation with my team about some decision we had to make. I don't really remember what, but we were not in agreement. And as a flat organization, it's like, okay, where do you go from here? There's no one to just sort of put the gavel down. And so we started verbally elbowing our way in and interrupting each other and getting louder and louder and interrupting and not letting each other finish our sentences before we had our own point to make. And it was getting a bit frenzied and chaotic, and I jumped right in and joined, because that's the only way I knew how to be heard, was to join in this more domineering way of communicating. And afterwards, I was exhausted. And I felt somewhat like how I felt when I'd come home from the law firm every day, which was drained and unhappy. And I thought, this is not what I meant by creating balance at work. I never want to have a conversation like this again. And I would never speak to my husband like this at home. And he would never speak to me like this at home. So why is it okay now, when we put our corporate faces on, to have this kind of communication with each other? And again, I was like, well, where do I look for help? And I didn't know of anyone or any company to emulate, to say, okay, this is how to create balance at work. And I know that they exist, I just didn't know them at the time. But actually, I'm really glad, because what it forced me to do was look inward. And that's when I realized what the key is to the feminine and bringing balance to work. Because, like I said, it's about being. And being isn't about trying to be anyone else. Trying is a very effortful word. It's just about being myself, about being connected to the experience, connected to the moment, connected to my why. And from there, everything is in alignment. So to experience what that is, I'm just going to lead us in a little activation so we can all be for a minute, okay? So let's all just close our eyes and take a nice deep breath and just arrive into this room. Bring your mind to where your body is. Bring your heart and your feelings to this space right now. And just notice how your breath is flowing and moving in and out of your body. There's nothing to change. There's nothing to do. Just notice how you are in this room. Notice how your feet feel in your shoes. Notice how your little pinky toe is feeling. Notice how your back feels against the chair. If your mind is wandering away, just gently bring it back. Notice if there's any ease in your body and where you feel it. Is there any discomfort in your body? Just notice it. There's nothing to change. There's nothing to do. Notice what you hear. The gentle bass of the ambient music in the room. Notice what you smell. Notice your mood. Notice if your mood is connected to the here and now, or if it's still a little bit somewhere else. How's your breath? Notice how it fills your chest. Notice if you're feeling comfortable here or you're a little antsy. However you feel is okay. So just take a few more breaths here. And when I count to 3, we'll return to the room together. 1, 2, 3. Welcome back. Do you feel a little shift? Yeah. So thanks for playing along with me. I know this can be a little uncomfortable to do because we don't practice this very much, especially at work, especially at Davos. But you might notice in the next few minutes or hours or days to come that some insights bubble up, maybe some aha moments, maybe a solution to a work problem that you've been going over just appears. Because that's the gift of the feminine. It allows us to drop beneath the noise of our minds into this space where we connect with that person behind the thoughts, to who we really are, to what we really want, to what we really stand for, to the truth that lives in our bones, that then gets expressed as the work we do, as our company mission or the ethos of our organization, our vision for where we're going. And then we invite in the masculine and we get to do something about it. And this is how we create balance from within to then bring it to work. And we become authentic leaders in integrity with what we say we want because we live it. And as a world leaders, this is how we need to emulate for everyone what it looks like to create a paradigm change. Because creating this balance in who we are and what we do is going to be just as impactful as the actual doing of our companies. And that is how we are going to actually free ourselves from that nursery rhyme, because we're going to show what it means to actually create your most powerful life through authenticity and integrity, being just who we are. So now I'd really like to invite, actually, before I invite my fellow co-founders and advisor on stage, are there any questions? Awesome. You know it all. Good. Well, I can tell I'm speaking to people who are recognizing the truth in themselves, whether you know it already or not, like it lives in you. Yeah. Okay, so now I'll invite Ted Moskovitz, my co-founder and husband, and Mary Olivar, maybe our first advisor to Alma, to come on up, and we'll do a little fireside chat together. Tiff, are you going to come up with us? No? We're going to do this? Okay. I'll ask Ted and Mary to just talk about your journey to arriving at Alma and why Alma was a yes for you.
So thanks, Danielle. That was really wonderful. This is actually the first time I got to hear this in full, and I just loved it. So thank you for sharing that with us. Separate from Alma Healing, my sort of day-to-day is I have an early stage venture fund and advisory firm. We're essentially technology investors. We do a lot of blockchain plus social impact. We do work around the future of mental health, the future of physical health. And so, for a long time, I've sort of been looking at tech and have this sort of techno-utopian idea of how we solve problems in the world. And it was always a very technological solution. It was, this code or this tool or this hardware, this whatever, right? I felt that way for a really long time. But then over the last few years, it began to shift for me. And I think the shift that I noticed was that the technology itself is only half of the equation. And the other half that is actually more than half and probably more important is the most important tech that we have, which is the human OS. It's our own operating system that governs our own minds and our own bodies. And this human operating system is really just so important. And what I began to realize is that technology is just a tool. We as humans decide how to use it. We decide what to prioritize and what to focus on. And something that I was noticing was people were just so disconnected from their own minds and from their own bodies and from the natural world that they were not prioritizing the right things. And so, Alma Healing was so appealing to me because, having gotten to try like some of the formulations and things that we ended up producing, I just noticed the changes in myself.
Keep going.
The changes in myself that happened like when consuming some of these things and how I was brought into this place of presence and into this place of balance that I hadn't found otherwise. And so, what made it a really strong yes for me was recognizing that here are these products that we could use as tools to put us into the right mental and physical states, to just sit with the questions of like, what should we be building and what should our priorities be in the world? And that's really what made it so appealing, I think, for me.
Thank you for the chance to answer that. I'm really, as I was listening to your story, Danielle, thinking about my own trajectory. So I was extremely lucky in that the corporate world that I was in was mission driven. I worked in the natural foods industry for years. And when I met you guys, I'd come from Whole Foods Market running their healthy eating education program. So it was very clearly rooted in values, in clear values that were not only articulated to internally to each other as a company, but also communicated to our customers and embodied in the way that we were practicing. So I felt very fortunate coming from a place where always my work, to some degree, at least at the very core of it, has felt aligned with my own personal values. And when I first met you guys and learned about what you're doing with Alma, I really put you on the hot seat with where is the product being grown? How is it being grown? Where are you sourcing it? How is it being extracted? So wanting to make sure that what was being represented was in alignment with my values of sustainability and of quality and of producing something that was ultimately in alignment with supporting people's wellness. And then also tuning in with how that was articulated and how that was differentiated and how from that place is where I was bringing in what I see as the feminine qualities of being in alignment in heart. I didn't, grill into your pro forma and know how much money it was going to make. I wanted to make sure that if it was something I was associated with, it was aligned with values. And that's what I'm excited about, is working with mission-driven business leaders and entrepreneurs and helping them not only discover and articulate their personal values, but bring those values into embodiment in their culture and in their company, and helping them express that through their business practices and through their interactions with their clients and their customers, and essentially with all their stakeholders. So it doesn't make sense for us to talk about being in balance or being in integrity or taking care of the world if we're not doing that in terms of all of our interactions with our suppliers, with our accountants, with our customers, with our employees. So that was something that resonated with me so much as I was able to connect with you both and discover that this was in line with your hearts. So that was, a wonderful thing to connect with you all about.
And I have to say that having you hold this feminine quality and energy for us as a company was so important to me, because like I said, I was really holding the torch for the company as the sole woman founder of what it means to create balance in this company. And whether you know it or not, Mary, you were my anchor in a lot of ways to stay centered and not fall to the bottom line, or to, what I think happens with a lot of people is you start with your mission and then you sort of digress and can make compromises, and all of a sudden you're really not in alignment with it anymore over time. So thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's so important for, particularly as we look now to the future, and mission-driven business is the future. And if anyone of you works with millennials or younger generations, you'll see that if they're not doing something that's not in line with who they see themselves as and what they care about, they will not be showing up in a way that is strong and consistent. And so it's about building, I would say, loyalty. That sounds a little bit more performance oriented, but it is potentially performance oriented when you have customers, when you have employees that are in personal alignment with your business's mission. Everyone's productivity will be higher, they'll be more committed, it'll be the difference between having a terrible day at work and just having a hard day at work, that you're still working towards something. So for me, giving, and this is something that we went through, and as we looked at how AMA was expressing itself and articulating its mission, being able to identify clearly what is at that core, what is at that heart center, that feminine center of caring, of compassion, of what is driving us, what is making us passionate, what is showing up, bringing that to the surface in a way where we can speak it to ourselves and speak it to others, and then also bringing that further out into the embodiment of the way the business structures are, how we're doing business, and also how we're interacting with each other. I love the story you told about the challenges of communication and being able to reset into those values you had. So this is not who I am, this is not why I'm here. And the more we can have that as a collective agreement that we've agreed upon, these are our values, this is why we are all here, the more we can together choose to express those.
Ted, I'm curious how it is for you being a supported male champion of the feminine in this new wave.
Yeah, it was an adjustment at first, for sure. I mean, I, at least at the time, had a story that the success and achievement that I had in the world, came from being aggressive and domineering, and it's what had worked for me, right? I had just constantly achieved all these hallmarks of success, through all the qualities that you think of as these typical male qualities, and I didn't value, the feminine as much at the time, and so it was definitely, an adjustment to start to come into that a little bit more. And, it's been beautiful to get to, learn from these incredible and powerful women in my life and tap into those things in my own life, and then to see how I've accelerated, in my own career and success through being someone who is empathetic and who actually deeply listens, and listens without an agenda, and these things that we think of as, more feminine qualities. So, it definitely was not always an easy path. I mean, there were times where I just want to step in and take charge and make a decision and move fast and all of these things. But I think the more you spend time kind of playing with both, the more you realize that that's really just a story, right? And it's a story that we have been socialized into believing, but it's not actually true, right? And that the real, beauty and productivity comes when we sort of bring these things into balance. So it's been an education for me, for sure. And now something that, I'm excited and proud to be a champion of, in a way that I wasn't before.
Yeah, that's one of the most surprising things that I learned and that I love bringing to my work and with clients and leaders now, which is unlearning the hustle attitude, because you have to make decisions and be fast and move forward. And actually, if you give yourself the chance to slow down, it's the key to being exponential. And you can actually expedite faster once you've given yourself a chance to reconnect. Because then the decisions, it's like serendipity. It comes back into focus of what you need to do and how you need to navigate. It's clear when it may have been a little chaotic or confusing before, because you're dealing with all the external noise. And all of a sudden you're just reconnected, and what you need to do is, it's just so loud, vibrating inside of you, and things can move really fast from there. Has that been your experience, Mary?
Yeah, what's coming in for me is just that how liberating it is to know what you care about and to be able to express what you care about and to know that your actions and your words are in alignment with what you care about. And, I think most of us have had the experience of not doing that, and we know how terrible that feels. It doesn't feel good in our body, it doesn't feel good in our hearts, and we show up and do a crappy job because we're coming from a place that is not who we truly are. So I see this as, really part of our pathway, particularly as we're at the World Economic Forum and looking at this through the lens of business and economics, that this is essential to what our world needs and what humans need to heal our hearts, to heal our relationships with others, to liberate ourselves, to step authentically and powerfully into claiming what we love and bringing that into our work.
Yeah, sure.
So my question is, from working with each other, are there any traits that you've been able to capture from each other that you'll be taking on your own side into your future work?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. So Ted, I don't know whether it's because he's Ted or because he's a man, but he has this incredible ability to step into whatever it is he needs to be. And that's how he grows. That's how he's grown his career and pivoted from thing to thing, is saying, okay, I want to go do that thing now. I want to go be an investor advisor. And then he steps into that skin and he becomes it. He lives it from the moment. He just has this way of cohering his head and his body into the space. Whereas I think as a woman, I feel like, I'm not ready yet. I don't know anything about this yet. I need validation from the world first to tell me I'm competent or I'm good enough or worthy of stepping into that skin to then go out and say I am X. And so I've been learning from him how to be it faster and own my own power more holistically without needing external validation.
Well, I think it's more about you two working with each other. You're good.
I think that, one of the biggest things that I learned from Danielle is just the importance of slowness in decision making and just, stepping outside of the mind and what's the story that I'm telling myself around this thing that feels so important, it feels like the end of the world that has to happen right now, and just being is this really true? Do I actually have to do this right now? Is this actually as consequential as I'm making it seem to be? I just used to spin up so fast and so loud in my own head, and I've learned to just step back, take a breath, ask, is this actually what's true? And you realize that when you approach something from that perspective, it's totally different, and it's a much better place, I think, to come at things from. There's so many things that I've learned from her. I think another one would be just recognizing the superpowers that exist in all the people who I work with, and not viewing my employees as objects towards my goals, and not trying to put people in the box of what I want from them, and instead recognizing that if I actually let them bring their full selves to the table and lean into their superpowers and the things that they're best at, I'll actually get something a lot better from them, because if I do the former, I'm essentially limiting them to my capabilities and not allowing them to bring forth the things that surpass my own ability, right? Which is just so important to growing any organization. You want people who are better than you, smarter than you, kinder than you, whatever, more than you, in some of these different ways, and that's something that's been really helpful for me as well.
And I'll add, I have a book coming out this fall called Atlas of Being, From Briefcase to Backpack, One Former Lawyer's Exploration of the Human Way. And in it, I catalog a lot of the experiences of this travel journey and the truths that I've learned and that I'm talking about today. And there's a lot of story about how Ted and I are our sharpest mirrors for each other, because, when we got married, it was way more than a contract with the state of, where do we get in DC?
Yeah.
It was a soul contract to use each other to grow in partnership and to be each other's foils in a sense for learning our lessons, and we're also each other's softest pillows to then integrate and learn that lesson and fail at that lesson many times with each other, feeling safe. So that is all a part of really, I mean, one of my favorite chapters in that book is all about you and our evolution in that relationship.
And just to have to plug you for a minute, if anyone wants to read part of the book, the first couple of chapters are available for you. You can come up to Danielle after and she'll give you access.
Thank you. See, it's good. Any other questions? Is that time?
No, go for it. Let's do questions.
Yeah, okay. Are there any other questions? No. Ted, would you speak to the name Amma and how we got it?
Yeah, so, there's this notion, I think, in the wellness space in general, that the way you sell products is telling someone, you're broken, take this, it'll fix you. And it's such a weird way of like selling to people, but it's one that has been really effective, especially like in this health and wellness space. Like you tell someone that there's something wrong with them and, you have the tool to help fix them. And I think that, the more that we got into like the world of cannabis and the hemp plant, the more we realized how much there were feminine qualities to it. So I'm not sure if people know this, but like all the cannabis plants that we use are female. The male plants they don't have like the flowering and the medicinal properties. So we're only using the female parts of the plant. And there's this thing that happens, I think, when using these products that is like, it's not trying to make you feel a certain way. It's allowing you to get rid of your thought loops and your negative thought patterns and your anxiety and things to just be the best version of you, right? And just to be your best self. And I think that this notion of allowing and just allowing someone's best self to come through is just inherently like such a feminine thing, that it felt really important to us to honor that, like both in the structure of the company and in the name as well. So Amma is something that exists in a number of different cultures and different languages. And it has this honorific quality of like a mother or more commonly a grandmother. It exists in South America, it exists in Indian culture, it exists in Iceland. And so this notion of Amma is like this nurturing grandmother, which I think is what we hope, people will feel like when trying the product. And so that's where it came from.
Do you have anything? I feel like you want to add something.
Oh, it's just resonating with me. And as I heard you speak, the word allowing really came in, and you just used that word as well. And I think that's really encapsulates some of the qualities of the feminine, of the divine feminine. And it's not a characteristic or quality we put a lot of value on in this, very results-driven paradigm that we've all been imprinted with. But there is tremendous power in being able to hold a strong container and to receive energy into it rather than seeking out and grabbing. And it's a little bit of a shift for a lot of us. You brought us into that space with the beingness. So that's just something I would encourage folks to play with and contemplate, is how much power there is in the empty bowl. And especially when that bowl has nice strong sides, and you can put intention into which you want to bring in, and then through the magic of flow, it shows up often. And I appreciate that was something that you were both willing to do with this company, was to be in a place of allowing, in the timing of it and in the intention that you created. And the other word that came in for me is remembering. And I feel like that's so much a part of your journey, is reclaiming and remembering who you already were, and then the same for you, finding those qualities that you've always had, but just weren't sure how to value them and express them. So, and thank you for that nursery rhyme, because it brought up one that I was told, which has explained a lot about my life. So,
Do you want to share?
Share it.
all right. I won't be my father's Jack. No, I won't be my mother's Jill. I'll be a fiddler's wife and fiddle when I will. So,
That is jazzy.
months when I realized that's my imprinting. So thank you for that.
And I'll just say, because I'm picturing if I'm sitting here listening to this as, you know, a different version of myself, and I'm giving myself in that chair and any of you who need it permission, explicit permission to go take being back with you and bringing it to your organization, in your life, in whatever way it fits, because it may not be a part of your current life or your organization today. So say that, you know, the crazy lady at Davos told me I can. I think if there's anything else you want to share, we're good. Yeah? Anything else, Ted?
I think we're all set.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.